All right, let's talk about a band that, on paper, should absolutely not work. A musical paradox that first broke the internet and then went on to break all the rules of a major music genre. Today, we're diving into the story of baby metal.
So let's just start with the one question that really sums up this whole thing. I mean, what would happen if you took the super cute, super synchronized world of J-pop idols and just smashed it head-on into the brutal, aggressive, chaotic world of heavy metal?
I mean, think about it. On one side, you've got kawaii. That's Japanese for cute, right? We're talking infectious pop music, perfectly timed dance moves, the whole 9 yards. And then on the other side, you have metal. Shredding guitars, double bass drums, mosh pits, the works. These are two worlds that just shouldn't mix. At least that's what everybody thought.
So how did this insane collision even happen in the first place? Well, it all kicked off with one pretty wild idea. Let's get into Section 1, an unlikely fusion. Okay, so this whole thing was basically cooked up by a producer who goes by Koba Metal, and his vision? It was simple, but kind of nuts. Create a metal dance unit. To really sell it, he built this whole mythology around the band. This idea that they get their orders from a mystical fox god who's on a mission to unite the world with a new form of metal. It's part genius marketing, part awesome backstory, and it was the perfect setup for all the chaos that was about to unfold.
But here's the thing. This crazy experiment didn't just create a band. It actually, kind of by accident, created a whole new genre of music. Which brings us to Section 2, the birth of kawaii metal.
And yeah, that genre is called kawaii metal. The whole formula is pretty much right there in the name. You take the super fast, super aggressive instruments from heavy metal, and you layer these light, catchy, J-pop style vocals right on top. And that's the key, right? It's the contrast, that clash between the heavy and the cute that makes the whole sound what it is.
So, who were the faces of this brand new metal revolution? Well, the original 3 members, Su Metal, Mo Metal, and U Metal, were only around 11 or 12 years old when this all started. But here's the really crazy part. None of them knew anything about heavy metal. Like they'd never even listened to it. They were total newcomers to the scene they were about to completely take over.
And their rise in Japan was, well, meteoric. They started out in 2010, really just as a small side project for another idol group called Sakura Gakuen. But they blew up fast. They dropped their first music video, Doki Doki Morning, in 2011, and just a year later, they were making history at Japan's huge Summer Sonic Festival, becoming the youngest act to ever play there. The buzz in Japan was definitely turning into a roar.
But just being huge in Japan wasn't gonna cut it. The fox god, apparently, had bigger plans. And the thing that would launch them onto the world stage, a single YouTube video. Time for Section 3, going viral, going global.
And that catalyst was a song called Gimme Chocolate. In 2014, the music video for it hit YouTube and just exploded. It was high energy, it was weird, it was so unbelievably catchy. And millions of people all over the world just sat there watching it, completely stunned, probably pretty confused, but totally hooked. For the very first time, the entire world was looking at this and asking, what is this?
And that viral fame wasn't just online clicks. It turned into massive real-world success almost overnight. All of a sudden, they're headlining their own sold-out shows in Hollywood, they're opening for Lady Gaga on her US tour, and they're sharing festival stages with the actual gods of metal. I'm talking Metallica, Iron Maiden, Slayer, Anthrax. This wasn't just a YouTube thing anymore. They were a genuine global force.
But you know how it is with viral stuff, right? Could an act like this actually last? Well, they answered that question loud and clear, by not just sticking around, but by smashing records left and right. Let's get into Section 4, conquering the world stage.
Back in Japan, their momentum was just unstoppable. Get this. In 2014, they became the youngest female act to ever headline Tokyo's legendary Budokan Arena. Their average age at the time? Just 14.6. Absolutely incredible. Then, a couple years later, they set their sights on the UK, and they became the first Japanese act to ever headline the famous Wembley Arena in London. And it's not just that they headlined, they sold it out. And on top of that, they broke the venue's all-time record for most merch sold in a single day. Just wow. And then, of course, there was America. In 2016, their album, Metal Resistance, hit number 39 on the US Billboard 200 chart. Now, that might not sound like number 1, but this was a huge deal. It was the first time any Japanese artist had cracked the top 40 in 53 years. 53!
Years. Now, of course, with all this success, you know what happens next, right? The gatekeepers came out. The metal community was divided, to say the least. You had the purists looking at the pop vocals, the choreographed dancing, and they were all asking the same thing. Yeah, but is it really metal? Well, the best answer to that question came from the metal god himself, the one and only Rob Halford, lead singer of Judas Priest. After he actually performed on stage with them, he just came out and said it. Baby metal is the future of metal. I mean, when a legend of that status says something like that, the argument's kind of over, isn't it?
Of course, a career that long is going to have some bumps in the road. In 2018, one of the original members, Yumi Metal, had to leave the band because of health issues. But the band adapted. They came up with this really cool system where they had a rotating group of backup dancers they called the Avengers to fill that third spot. And then in 2023, they made it permanent again. One of those Avengers, Momoko Okasaki, officially joined the band as the new Momo Metal, kicking off a brand new chapter.
So when you look back at everything, what's the real impact of this completely unexpected band? Let's wrap things up with Section 5, the Baby Metal Legacy. So what did they leave in their wake? Well, for starters, they didn't just play music. They literally pioneered a whole new genre. They became the first Asian act ever to hit #1 on the Billboard Rock Albums chart. They smashed records in the UK and the US for a Japanese band, records that have been standing for more than half a century. And they toured with absolute legends like Metallica and the Red Hot Chili Peppers. But I think ultimately, what they really did was prove that a truly original, and let's be honest, a truly weird idea could tear down all the walls and bring a huge global audience together. When you boil it all down, baby metal proved that music genres aren't these strict, rigid boxes. They're more like ingredients in a kitchen, just waiting for someone brave enough to try a new recipe. They made something that was fun, powerful, and completely out of left field. And it really does make you wonder, what's the next impossible combination that's waiting to blow our minds?